On a cold, rain-heavy afternoon in the Pacific Northwest, a man walked into Portland International Airport, carrying a briefcase and a kind of calm that made him invisible. He wasn't rushed, he wasn't cautious. He moved like someone who knew precisely where he was going and exactly how the day would end. He wore a dark suit, white shirt, thin tie. Nothing expensive, nothing cheap. He paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle, gave the name D.B. Cooper, and accepted his boarding pass without hesitation. No one asked for identification. In 1971, airports were places of convenience, not suspicion, and Cooper passed through that system like it had been designed for him. He boarded the plane and chose a seat near the rear. Flight attendants would later struggle to describe him, beyond impressions that felt vague even as they spoke them. Middle-aged, average height, brown hair, polite, calm, forgettable. He ordered a bourbon and soda, lit a cigarette, crossed his legs, and stared out the window as the aircraft taxied toward the runway. There was no visible anxiety in his posture, no restless movement, no last-second doubt. Whatever fear might have existed stayed buried beneath control. This was not a man improvising. This was a man executing something he had already rehearsed many times in his head. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant. She barely glanced at it and slipped it into her pocket, assuming it was a phone number. Men did that often in those days. Cooper leaned slightly closer and spoke in a low, even voice, telling her she might want to read it. He said he had a bomb. The words weren't delivered as a threat, they were delivered as information. When she read the note, the reality hit immediately. Cooper asked her to sit beside him. He opened his briefcase, just enough for her to see wires and red cylindrical objects arranged carefully inside. Whether the device was real or not no longer mattered. The balance of control had already shifted. What unsettled the crew later was not aggression, but restraint. Cooper never raised his voice. He never issued frantic threats. He explained his demands calmly, as if outlining a routine transaction. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, a fuel truck waiting when they landed in Seattle. No police interference, no tricks. If everything went according to plan, no one would be harmed. There was no excitement in his tone, no sense that he was enjoying the situation. He behaved like a man following instructions, not creating chaos. The cockpit was notified. Authorities were contacted. Negotiations began. Cooper remained relaxed. He drank his bourbon. He smoked. He watched the cabin without. Obvious tension. Panic creates unpredictability. Calm creates cooperation. Cooper understood that people behave more reliably when they don't feel attacked, and he used that psychological lever perfectly. Every interaction he had reduced resistance rather than provoked it. When the plane landed in Seattle, his demands were met. The ransom arrived. The parachutes were delivered. Cooper kept his word. All passengers were released unharmed. They walked off the plane, unaware that they had just been part of one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. Most of the crew was released as well. Cooper kept only a minimal team on board. The aircraft refueled, engines restarted. The plane lifted back into the dark sky, heading south. It was during this phase that Cooper's behavior began to deeply disturb investigators in hindsight. He issued very specific flight instructions. He wanted the aircraft flown low and slow, landing gear down, flaps partially deployed. These settings affected airspeed, turbulence, and cabin pressure. They made the aircraft more stable at lower altitudes. These were not the demands of someone guessing. They reflected technical understanding. Cooper knew how planes behaved under different conditions, and he was shaping the environment to suit what came next. Somewhere over the dark, rain-soaked forests of Washington state, Cooper stood up. He put on a parachute. He tied the money securely to himself. He adjusted his clothing and equipment with deliberate care. There was no visible hesitation, no second guessing. He walked toward the rear of the plane and opened the aft stairs mid-flight. A violent rush of air tore through the cabin, shaking the aircraft. Warning lights flickered. The crew felt the plane respond to sudden imbalance. And then, without ceremony, without witnesses, without a final word, Cooper stepped into the night and vanished. When the plane landed again, shock quickly gave way to certainty. No one believed a man could survive a jump like that. Night, rain, wind, rough terrain, dense forest. The assumption was simple. Cooper was dead. Investigators believed they were now running a recovery operation, not a manhunt. They expected to find a body within days. They found nothing. Search teams combed miles of forest on foot. Helicopters swept valleys, rivers, and ridgelines. Boats dragged waterways. Dogs followed scent trails that ended abruptly. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed. No parachute, no remains. No trace that Cooper had ever reached the ground. The confidence that he had died began to erode, replaced by something far more unsettling. What if he survived? The FBI launched one of the most exhaustive and frustrating investigations in its history. Thousands of tips poured in from across the country. Hundreds of suspects were identified and scrutinized. Military veterans, skydivers, engineers, pilots, parachuting enthusiasts, ordinary men whose lives were dismantled under suspicion. Each suspect looked promising until they didn't. Physical descriptions didn't match, skills didn't align, alibis held. Each dead end reinforced an uncomfortable truth. Cooper hadn't left investigators a mistake to exploit. The ransom money offered no immediate help. Serial numbers were distributed nationwide to banks and businesses. For years, none appeared in circulation. Cooper wasn't spending the money openly. If he was spending it at all, he was doing so slowly, carefully, or not at all. That level of restraint baffled investigators. Most criminals rush. They get sloppy. They leave trails. Cooper exercised patience that bordered on unnatural. As time passed, investigators began re-examining Cooper's choices more closely. He had rejected a military parachute in favor of a civilian one that offered better maneuverability. He had demanded multiple parachutes, possibly to prevent authorities from sabotaging them. He had chosen a jump location with heavy forest cover and low population density. These weren't the decisions of a desperate man. They were the decisions of someone who understood risk and planned accordingly. Nearly a decade later, the case took an unexpected turn. A child digging near the Columbia River uncovered bundles of decaying cash buried in the sand. The serial numbers matched the ransom. Investigators finally had physical evidence. But instead of resolving the mystery, it deepened it. The money wasn't scattered randomly. It wasn't shredded or torn apart. It appeared deliberately placed. If Cooper had died on impact, how did the money end up there? And if he survived, why abandon part of it? The FBI proposed theory after theory. Perhaps Cooper lost some of the money during the jump and survived anyway. Perhaps he hid it temporarily and never returned. Perhaps he survived the landing, but died later from injuries in a remote area. Each explanation required assumptions that couldn't be proven. The evidence refused to lock into a single narrative. As the years stretched on, the investigation slowly decayed. Witnesses aged, memories blurred, suspects died. New forensic techniques emerged, but there was nothing left to test. No confirmed DNA, no fingerprints that led anywhere, no confession letter surfaced. Cooper existed only as fragments, speculation, and absence. Something subtle but significant happened as the case aged. Cooper stopped being viewed purely as a criminal. He became an idea, a symbol of something deeply uncomfortable. The possibility that one man without violence, without chaos, without even leaving his real name behind, had defeated the system completely. Not through brilliance alone, but through discipline and restraint. Cooper never contacted the media. He never claimed credit. He never sought recognition. There was no manifesto, no explanation. no attempt to shape his legacy. In a world where criminals often crave attention, Cooper did the opposite. He denied the system the one thing it needs to close a case: a voice. After 15 years of chasing shadows, the FBI quietly acknowledged what had become unavoidable. There was nothing left to pursue. The case remained open on paper for decades, but in reality, it had already ended. Eventually, the Bureau closed it. Not because it was solved, because it could no longer be solved. Today, Cooper remains the only unsolved skyjacker in American history. His identity is unknown, his fate unconfirmed, his story unfinished. He entered the public record for a few hours and then erased himself completely. If Cooper survived, he likely returned to an ordinary life. He may have gone back to work, sat at dinner tables, paid bills, aged quietly, died anonymously. The people around him would never have known that the man beside them once stepped out of a plane and disappeared into legend. His success wasn't built on violence or ego. It was built on restraint. That is why this story refuses to fade. Not because of the jump, not because of the money, but because of the silence. In a world obsessed with exposure and documentation, one man left nothing behind. No digital footprint, no confession, no closure. The FBI didn't lose because they were careless. They lost because Cooper understood something fundamental. Attention creates mistakes. Ego leaves trails. The need to be seen is what gets people caught. Cooper wanted only one thing: to be gone, and so he is. The man the FBI tracked for 15 years was never caught, never identified, never explained. The system built to close every loop was left staring at an open end. And that open end still haunts it because it suggests something deeply uncomfortable. That sometimes the system doesn't win. Sometimes silence does.